My girlfriend cheated with a two-faced man, then faked a pregnancy after I kicked her out. A strange man who believed her attacked me outside my home, but they had no idea about the trap I'd set. We had been together for 2.5 years, and for most of our relationship, everything seemed quite normal. Cindy and I had our couple's arguments like anyone else, but there was always a foundation of trust that made me feel secure. At least that is what I believed until a few months ago. She started to change. First, it was small details that I barely noticed. Messages she received and closed too quickly, calls at strange hours that she silenced before answering, and a distant attitude that I could not explain. I was used to working from home, in my home office, editing videos for the company where I work, so I could notice those changes because we spent a lot of time together. The strange thing was that she never seemed to have a concrete reason for those attitudes, just vague excuses, tiredness, stress, or things like that. At first, I try not to worry too much. We all go through complicated moments, I thought, but my instinct did not fail me. There was something in her gaze, in how she avoided looking me directly in the eyes, and in how she moved around the house with a kind of tension that did not fit her usual character. I did not want to confront her immediately because I feared that, if I did it without proof, she would deny it, and everything would probably become more complicated. What Cindy did not know, and what kept me silent for weeks, was that I had discovered Duncan. Duncan was a man of about 30 years old who apparently led a normal and orderly life. He had a wife, children, and a reputation for being religious, one of those who project an impeccable morality to society. What few people knew, and Cindy did not either, was that he had a double life. I discovered it by accident, looking through things she left in plain sight without realizing it, and out of an impulse of curiosity more than paranoia. At first, I did not want to believe it. I looked for more information, and everything matched. He was involved with Cindy, and everything he showed to the world was just a facade. It was strange to see how someone could maintain such a structured life, and, at the same time, be so dishonest with others. When I finally felt sure of what I had discovered, I was furious, but I did not show it. I had been through enough stress at my job, and the idea of confronting Cindy without definitive proof was not what I wanted. My plan, although I did not think about it very consciously, was simply to wait and see what she would do. I knew that Duncan would never leave his family. He was too religious, and, although he had this double life, he was one of those people who only feigned devotion. That meant that Cindy was playing alone, or at least her feelings for him could not be reciprocated in the way she perhaps wanted. The day everything exploded was unexpected. She came home, and, with an expression I could not fully decipher, she told me she needed some time, that she had to think about the relationship, that she was going on a retreat for a few days, and that upon returning she would decide if we wanted to continue together or not. I was paralyzed for a moment. I had been about to confront her, to tell her that I knew everything about Duncan, to end the relationship, but I did not have the opportunity. Her words took me by surprise, and, although I felt a knot in my stomach, I decided to stop myself. I just nodded and put on a sad expression, faking what everyone would expect from me: sadness, disappointment, perhaps a bit of hopelessness. She seemed satisfied with my reaction and left without looking back. 2 days later, the door opened, and there was Cindy. Her face looked defeated, but she was trying to maintain an attitude as if nothing had happened, smiling weakly as she walked towards me. I looked at her, and I could not help an ironic smile tinged with a slight reproach. "I thought it would take you longer to think things over," I said in a calm but firm voice. "I was surprised you came back so quickly." She tried to respond with a casual hello, but her gaze quickly shifted to her things, which I had already gathered into several boxes. As she contemplated the boxes, her eyes began to fill with tears, but she kept trying to maintain a normal appearance, as if everything were part of a routine she could resume. I approached slowly and looked her straight in the eyes. I felt how all the air in the room became charged with tension. "I know everything, Cindy," I said, letting each word land with weight. "About Duncan. I saw the messages. I know everything about you too. Let me guess. He told you he would leave his wife and be with you, and you believed him? You slept together several times, and now he left you, and you come back here as if nothing happened." Her smile vanished instantly. Her lips trembled, and she tried to deny what I had just said, but no convincing words came out. Tears began to run down her cheeks, and her voice broke. "Artur, I. She tried to stammer, but she could not form a coherent sentence. No, Cindy. I interrupted her with a calm that contrasted with the storm of emotions I felt. There are no excuses. You cannot deny what you did. She fell to her knees sobbing, begging between tears and sobs that she could not lie. Her voice broke as she implored me to forgive her, not to let her go, that she could fix everything. But at that moment, there was nothing that could save the situation. I took the boxes with her belongings and placed them carefully in front of the door. I did not say another word. There was no need to shout or insult. Every action spoke for itself. Cindy followed me with her eyes, imploring a reaction that would not come, and she finally understood that there was no going back. Get out of my house, I said firmly. Everything that is left of you is here, in these boxes. She tried to stop me, to beg me not to do it, but she could not. I pushed her gently towards the door while holding the boxes, closing behind her the door to my home, to my life, to everything we had shared. Outside remained the sound of her sobs, a raw memory of all that she had betrayed, while I stood in silence, breathing deeply, with my heart beating fast, feeling a mixture of relief and pain, of sadness and justice. Everything was over, not with screams or violence, but with the truth as the ultimate weapon, making it clear that some lies simply cannot be sustained, and that when betrayal is revealed, there is no room for half measures or second chances. From that day on, my life changed completely. I thought that by kicking Cindy out of my house I could close that chapter and breathe a little more easily, but that was not the case. Every day was a constant reminder of what had happened, and she made sure I did not forget. At first, her attempts were discreet, almost timid. She would knock on my door, leave notes under the doormat, or call my phone with a pleading tone. Her voice, once full of confidence, now sounded broken and full of regret. She told me she should never have asked me for time, that she had realized she loved me, and that she was willing to do whatever it took to amend her mistakes. Every word was a mixture of sincerity and manipulation. I could hear her desperation, but also the certainty that she knew I was in control. I would not let her in. Every time she appeared, I stood firm with the door closed, watching as her face contorted with the powerlessness of not being able to recover what she had lost. There were days when I felt annoyed, days when I felt relieved, and days when a mixture of both emotions hit me hard. I knew I had to keep my distance, that giving in would mean opening the door again to betrayal and pain. But Cindy did not stop. As the weeks went by, her desperation grew and her tactics became bolder. She began to approach the neighbors, talking to them as if I were the one to blame for everything that had happened. She told them distorted versions of our relationship, painting me as an insensitive and cruel man, incapable of understanding her feelings. She told them that I had pushed her away unjustly, that I had left her helpless and alone, and, most seriously, she assured them that she was expecting my child, a lie that had no foundation whatsoever. At first, the neighbors seemed confused, worried about the situation. Some came to knock on my door, asking if everything was okay, if I had really left her on the street. I remained firm, explaining the truth calmly and clearly, without raising my voice, without trying to humiliate her publicly. Every word was measured, every gesture was controlled, because I knew that any mistake could be used against me. But the pressure began to build. Every day new rumors arrived. Every day there were glances and comments from neighbors who had previously been indifferent. Some began to look at me with distrust, and others even asked me indirectly if what Cindy was saying could be true. It was then that I realized her strategy was more dangerous than I had imagined. She was not just seeking to reconcile with me. She was seeking to isolate me socially, undermine my reputation, and make the community think I was the villain. The days turned into weeks, and every attempt by Cindy to enter my house became more persistent. She would show up early in the morning, late at night, and even during work hours, ringing the doorbell insistently, leaving messages on my answering machine, or trying to surprise me in my home office. Her red eyes and trembling voice showed regret, but there was also an air of calculated manipulation, as if she were testing how far she could go before I reacted. I remained firm, but the situation became unbearable when the neighbors started to get directly involved. Cindy began to organize informal meetings in front of my house, talking to the neighbors about how I had left her alone and abandoned. Her words were filled with drama, acted tears, and a story that had nothing to do with reality. The supposed pregnancy, the injustice of my attitude, the loneliness in which she claimed to have been left. Some neighbors began to look at me with suspicion. Others directly confronted me, asking why I had acted that way. I remember one particular day that was the breaking point. It was an ordinary morning. I was in my office, working on an important editing project, when I heard shouts and voices outside my window. I looked and saw Cindy surrounded by 3 neighbors, talking to them with tears in her eyes and a pleading voice. I tried to stay calm, but I could not help feeling a blow of frustration. I went out into the hallway and shouted from my door, "Cindy, stop." She turned slowly, feigning surprise and fear, while the neighbors looked at her, confused. "Arthur," she began with a trembling voice, "you cannot leave me like this. I am expecting a child." I felt my heart tighten and, at the same time, fill with indignation. The lie was so blatant that I found it hard to believe she had the audacity to say it in public. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm in front of the neighbors. "Cindy, stop lying," I said firmly. "There is no child, and everything you are saying is false. Every word you say is distorted and not true." The neighbors exchanged confused glances, and some began to doubt her version. But she did not stop. She continued to cry and exaggerate every gesture, seeking sympathy, seeking for someone to confront me. "He left me helpless," she shouted. "I do not know what I would do without help. It is all his fault." It was then that I realized I could not let this continue. I could not allow the community, my surroundings, my own life to be affected by her lies. So I took a deep breath, holding back my anger and pain, and made a decision that would change the dynamic immediately. "Cindy," I said with a firm voice, looking at the neighbors as well, "everything she says is false. There is no child, and the reason she left is because she betrayed our relationship. Now, please, leave and stop involving other people in your lies." She tried to interrupt me, trying to smooth over the situation with desperate words, but I did not give her the chance. I took the boxes with her belongings, and, this time, I did not just gently push her towards the door, I accompanied her to the street, leaving everything in plain sight for the neighbors to understand that there were no manipulations on my part. "Get out of my life, Cindy," I said. "There is no turning back now." Cindy's sobs echoed down the street, but there was no compassion in my voice. All I did was place the boxes in front of her door, take a step back, and close the door behind her, leaving a heavy silence that contrasted with the confusion of the neighbors. Some watched from their windows, others murmured among themselves, and I simply breathed, trying to regain my composure and letting the truth stand above her lies. During the following days, Cindy continued to appear, insisting, but she no longer sought reconciliation directly. She became more strategic, trying to talk to the neighbors, trying to generate more sympathy through tears and half-truths. However, I was already prepared for this. Every encounter, every comment, every gesture of hers was met with calm, without impulsive reactions, because I knew that patience and firmness were my best allies. I felt as if I were walking on a tightrope. On one hand, the feeling of injustice and betrayal. On the other, the need to maintain stability, my reputation, and my emotional tranquility. Each day became a small challenge, an exercise in emotional control and resistance to the manipulation of someone who had shown she could lie without remorse. What surprised me the most was how Cindy could transform any situation to her apparent advantage, how she could make even neighbors who had known and trusted me before doubt the version of the story. It was exhausting, frustrating, but it also gave me an unexpected clarity about the strength one can have when one stands firm and does not give in to lies or emotional manipulation. Several weeks passed like this. Every day was a reminder of how difficult it can be to close a chapter of your life when the other person does not understand the meaning of truth. Cindy had learned too late that lies can push someone away, and I, though hurt, had learned that firmness and patience were more powerful weapons than any impulsive confrontation. The most painful thing was to see how the lie materialized on the walls of my own house. One morning, upon opening the door, I found the word "coward" painted with black spray paint on one of the side walls. At first I thought it might be some isolated act of vandalism, maybe bored teenagers, but the next day another phrase appeared, "not a man," and then more, all directed at me, all with the clear intention of humiliating me publicly. I cleaned the walls each time, spending time and money on paint to cover the insults. But the message was repeated over and over again, like a cruel reminder that I could no longer even trust the neighborhood I had considered quiet. There were nights when I heard laughter outside, hurried footsteps, the sound of a spray can being shaken, and I knew that at dawn I would find another taunt written on my house. I tried to ignore it, to stay calm, to continue with my work from home as if nothing was happening. But the tension was unbearable. Every time I went out to buy groceries or take out the trash, I felt gazes fixed on my back, comments murmured behind my back, and the constant weight of the lie that Cindy had sown. The lowest point came one day when everything boiled over. It was an afternoon like any other. I had finished work and decided to go for a walk to clear my mind. I had barely closed the door behind me when I heard a loud voice call my name. It was Gary, the typical neighbor who called himself the protector of women. Tall, burly, always with an air of superiority, as if he were the moral guardian of the neighborhood. I had seen him several times talking to Cindy on the street, listening to her attentively, believing every word she said. "You," he shouted, pointing his finger at me. "So here is the coward everyone is talking about." I tried to stay calm, but I could not help feeling my stomach clench. "Gary, I do not know what Cindy may have told you, but it is not true. She—" "Shut up," he interrupted, approaching with firm steps. "How dare you leave her alone, throw her out on the street? And on top of that, knowing she is expecting a child." I took a deep breath. That pregnancy lie was still growing like a snowball. "Gary, there is no child. That is a lie. You do not know the truth. You only heard one side of the story." His face turned red with fury. He came even closer, so close that I could feel his breath, heavy with rage. "I do not need to hear your version," he shouted. "I know perfectly well what kind of man you are." Suddenly, he pushed me forcefully against the gate of my own house. I felt the blow on my back and a sharp pain shot through my body. My first impulse was to defend myself, to push him back, but I held back. It was clear to me that any reaction from me could be used against me. "Gary, stay away," I said with a firm voice, although I was trembling inside. "I do not want any trouble with you." But he was not listening to reason. With a gesture full of rage, he raised his fist and landed a direct punch on my cheek. The pain was immediate, a burning sensation that made me stagger to one side. In the distance, I heard the shouts of other neighbors watching the scene, some cheering him on, others surprised. I brought my hand to my face, feeling the hot, swollen skin. Inside, everything was screaming for me to hit him back, to defend myself, but my mind was stronger than my instincts. I knew that if I responded, the narrative that Cindy had invented would be consolidated. They would see me as the aggressor, not a man, that they had already painted on my walls. So I did not do it. I stood still, breathing deeply, with my dignity intact, even though my body ached. "Are you done?" I said to him calmly, although my voice trembled. Gary stepped back, surprised that I had not reacted. Maybe he expected a fight, something to confirm what he wanted to believe about me, but I did not give him that satisfaction. I went into my house, closed the door, and stood for a few minutes leaning against it, with my cheek throbbing and my heart racing. The tears did not come, but the anger did. I could not let this go on like this. It was not just a couple's problem. It was harassment, violence, defamation. That same night, I went to the police station. With my face still marked by the blow, I filed a formal complaint against Gary for assault and against Cindy for defamation, harassment, and indirect vandalism. I brought photos of the vandalized walls, voice messages she had left me, and recordings of her lies in which she claimed to be pregnant. It was not much, but it was a start. The officer who attended to me listened to everything attentively and nodded from time to time. He asked me several times if I was sure I had not responded to Gary's punch, and I repeated the same thing. I did not do it. I did not want trouble. I just wanted the truth to come out. Weeks of paperwork, statements, and visits to the public prosecutor's office followed. It was not easy. Cindy tried to play the victim even more, crying in front of the authorities and painting me as a monster who had abandoned her. Gary, for his part, tried to justify his aggression by saying he did it in defense of a helpless woman. But the lack of evidence in his favor, coupled with the records of my previous complaints, began to tip the scales. Finally, the lawsuit proceeded. Cindy was formally notified and, for the first time in all this time, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. They were no longer tears of manipulation. They were tears of someone who was beginning to realize that the consequences had arrived. Gary also faced charges for assault, and, although he tried to pass himself off as a hero, the law did not see it that way. What for him was an act of justice was nothing more than an unjustified physical attack. It was a long process, full of paperwork and hearings, but each step was a reminder that I had done the right thing by not hitting back. Every document, every statement, gave me a little more strength to keep going. I am not going to lie, the road was hard. The stigma in the neighborhood did not disappear immediately. The stare still weighed on me, and the words "coward" and "not a man" still echoed in my head every time I went out on the street. But now I had something more important, the certainty that the truth was on my side, and that, no matter how much Cindy tried to manipulate everyone, justice carried more weight than any rumor. That was, perhaps, the hardest lesson of all, learning to restrain myself, not to react with my fists, but with my head. Because I understood that dignity is not defended by hitting harder, but by resisting and proving the truth, even when it seems like everything is against you. And so, with the lawsuit in progress, with the neighbors slowly realizing the truth, I began to recover some of what I had lost, my peace, my voice, my life. Several months have passed now since all this occurred. Looking back, I still feel a mixture of anger, relief, and also some sadness. Not because I want to get back with Cindy, that would be impossible after everything she did, but because I never thought that the person to whom I opened my life and my home would be capable of going so far just out of spite. After the complaint, things moved faster than I expected. I had collected evidence of everything. The building's security cameras showing Cindy harassing me at the entrance, the audio recordings I made when she was yelling at me that I had gotten her pregnant, something that was never true, the graffiti on my walls, and even the medical report confirming there were never any signs that she was expecting a child. All of that, plus the statements from some neighbors who ended up admitting she had manipulated them, were enough for the case to proceed. When the trial came, Cindy tried to present herself as the perfect victim, crying, saying that I had abandoned her overnight, that I did not give her support in a supposed pregnancy, that she was suffering emotionally because of me. It was grotesque to hear her invent so many things in front of everyone, looking me in the eye as if she still believed she could convince me. But the most shocking thing was when my lawyer showed the messages between her and Duncan, the proof of her infidelity, and the fact that, during that time to think, what she was really trying to do was confirm if Duncan was going to leave his wife. That was the first crack in her facade. The judge looked at her with a seriousness that made me feel that the truth was finally coming to light. Gary, for his part, did not have better luck. He had been presented as a concerned neighbor, but the security recordings clearly showed him hitting me in the street without me reacting. In addition to the testimonies of other neighbors who confirmed how he insulted me and incited me to fight, that was enough to make it clear that he was not just a meddler, but also someone who acted with unjustified violence. The verdict was a relief. It was proven that there was never any abuse on my part, that Cindy was never pregnant, and that both she and Gary acted against me maliciously. The judge ordered that both be convicted, Gary for physical assault and Cindy for defamation, harassment, and moral damages. What surprised me the most was the financial resolution. Cindy now has to pay me compensation for damages. It is not $1 million amount, but it is enough that she will have to bear the consequences of her actions for years. I am not going to deny that there was a certain taste of justice in hearing that part of the sentence. After so many sleepless nights, so much stress, feeling that the system was working in my favor was a balm. I know that many will think that I won, but in reality what I feel is different. Yes, I freed myself from a toxic and manipulative person, and the truth came to light, but the experience left scars. For weeks after the trial, I still jumped at noises outside my apartment. I was afraid of seeing graffiti on the walls again or finding Cindy waiting for me at the door. That paranoia gradually faded, but it made me aware of how fragile tranquility can be when someone decides to destroy it with lies. Today I feel good, better than I thought I would be. I have regained the calm in my home. I have refocused on my work and, above all, on myself. I do not have a partner, and I am not looking for one right now. I do not want to repeat the mistakes of the past or rush into anything. I prefer to take my time and truly heal. What motivated me to write this here is because I feel there is a topic that is rarely talked about seriously. What it really means when someone asks you for a break in a relationship. Cindy asked me for it as if it were an innocent gesture, as if it were something normal to think things over better. But behind that request, there was deceit, betrayal, and a hidden plan. For me, that phrase no longer means anything good. It is simply an excuse to justify decisions that have already been made in silence. And I also want people to understand what a scorned person is capable of doing. Cindy was not content with the relationship ending. She did not accept that her affair with Duncan would lead to nothing. She decided to sink me, manipulate the neighbors, invent a pregnancy, tarnish my reputation, and even orchestrate physical assaults against me. All because she could not stand that I closed the door on her after discovering her betrayal. The truth is that I never imagined someone could lie in that way. I thought those things only happened in movies or in stories one reads on the internet. But now I had to live it. And if I learned anything, it is that you cannot underestimate how far someone can go when they act out of resentment. Today, months later, I feel stronger, not because I came out unscathed, but because I survived something that truly shook me to the core, and because I learned that peace of mind and dignity are worth much more than any relationship. If someone reading this is going through a similar situation, I just want to tell you something. Do not be afraid to set boundaries. Do not allow another person's lies and manipulations to destroy you. Document everything, seek legal support if necessary, and above all, do not give in to emotional blackmail. I have already closed this chapter of my life, and although it still hurts to have trusted so much in someone who did not deserve it, I am also grateful that all this came to light before there was a bigger commitment, like a marriage or children. Because, at the end of the day, I prefer to have discovered Cindy as she is than to have continued living in a lie.